This is Akashvani. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on India sends humanitarian aid to the people of Palestine. The participants are Shilkant Sharma, former diplomat, and Ishan Mittal, anchor.
Indian Air Force aircraft C-17 was dispatched to Al Arish Airport in Egypt with medical supplies and relief material meant for the Gaza Strip in Palestine, which is facing a blockade and an Israeli military operation. The Al Arish Air Base is close to Gaza. This is in keeping with India's stance to contribute towards relief work and the restoration of peace in the region. To discuss more on this topic, we have with us former diplomat Shilkant Sharma. Mr. Sharma, welcome to the show.
Namaskar.
Mr. Sharma, could you talk about the nature of relief and supplies sent for the people of Gaza and why is it being routed via Egypt?
The relief supplies cannot reach Gaza except through the opening which is provided by Egypt in Rafah, because all other openings are controlled by Israel and Israel has blocked them. Hence, the first port where relief supply should reach will have to be in Egypt. The second step which is necessary is that once the supplies reach Egyptian airports, the land route has to be taken to ferry relief to Gaza. For that, opening of gates and trucks should be allowed. That is the requirement. So far, the opening has been slow and very small opening. 20 trucks allowed yesterday is too small for the demands of 1.3 million people who are trapped in Gaza. And the population is 2.3 million, of which 1 million have fled. So those who fled and those who are trapped, they all need assistance. And so first requirement is that Egyptian efforts to send aid should be increased and should be supported. The conditions placed by Israel about not allowing fuel to go are creating problems for people because fuel is essential. Traffic within the area and though it's a small strip, but still moving and ferrying relief supply within Gaza will require fuel. And if there's no fuel, then automatically there is a stop. The other condition put by Israel that nothing of the aid should reach Hamas's hands. Now that is very easily said, but it is very difficult to enforce because Hamas controls that area and there are stories that Hamas has also been involved in humanitarian efforts within Gaza for the Palestinian people, which was the reason why it was actually popular and which is the reason why way back in 2006, Hamas managed to win the elections. Of course, in recent times and especially after 7th of October, there is considerable anger against Hamas because it is Hamas's action in Israel which has befallen this catastrophe on the Gazan people. And the moderate and sensible people feel that this kind of extremist terror has led to what is now happening to innocents in Gaza. So, and what did Hamas gain by these actions? So important leaders who have sympathy with Palestinian cause, they are angry that instead of helping the Palestinian cause, this extremist violence has actually led to a worsening of this overall plight of the Palestinians. And in that respect, they have done no help to them. Now, the continuing siege of Gaza and inability to supply adequate relief is causing daily misery. Situation in Gaza and in the Palestinian territories is so miserable that metaphor doesn't fulfill requirements of speech. What we want to say, we don't have metaphor. As in the past, natural calamities, for them help was given. And when natural calamities come, help can go faster. Though there are natural obstructions in the reaching of relief. But in this kind of a man-made horror, getting relief is complicated by human actions. So there is a certain
It has also been called the 9/11 for Israel, the Hamas action on October 7. But at the same time, as you rightly said, it befell a lot of sorrow for the people of Gaza. So we want to come back to the point that medical supplies have been sent. A lot of relief material has been sent, and you've already talked about how there's a sense of desperation that has pervaded the Gazan principality in that sense. So could you talk about the blockade that has been imposed by Israel? What is the Operation Iron Swords by Israel on Gaza? And why is there this kind of deadlock? How will it be resolved? Could you talk about India's foreign policy in that sense? How they are balancing the two ends?
No, India's foreign policy is very clear. We have for the last 30, 40 years, one article of faith which has been very critical, and that is that India does not support terrorism in any form, that no cause justifies terrorism. So wherever there is terrorist action, India is condemning it. Has always denounced it in no uncertain terms. So the action on 7th of October was clearly a very grisly form of terrorism. Human lives lost and unsuspecting youngsters who were meeting for music festival on their holy day, Yom Kippur. They were attacked in the dead of the night, and unprepared civilians were killed. So this kind of violence is completely unacceptable. And its repercussions we are familiar with the repercussions of such violence. And you have already pointed out 9/11. You just remember what America did after 9/11, unrestrained action. But precisely for the experience which the Americans had after the actions they took in consequence of 9/11, there is a sense of realization that extreme revengeful action may not solve the problem. And the aim should be to look ahead and see how the whole situation can be stabilized and how people's misery can be alleviated. In this sense, Indian diplomacy has been, while condemning terrorism, has been also for unrestrained humanitarian relief supplies to those who are affected, the innocent civilians whose lives are endangered, how to protect them. The problem which has been caused by Hamas's action is also due to taking of hostages. They have taken a large number of people hostages, and they want to now deal with hostage release as they've been doing it in the past. And that is their leverage. Now, this kind of a diabolical game in which you hold innocent people hostage and then start demanding release of prisoners from Israel, or demanding relief supplies for release of hostages, or removing a blockade and stopping of air bombing. All this by using the hostages, it complicates the diplomatic environment, because those who are engaged, their own position is weakened when one side demands everything in exchange for a release of hostages. There's also a fog of war in the sense that information is difficult to decipher. One doesn't know what is true and what is false. There's a lot of disinformation also. For instance, one has heard that among the hostages are prisoners of war. For them, there are different rules. But who will know what is the situation? And for humanitarian help, assistance, and immediate supplies of relief, it should be unconditional. It should be unrestrained. And what will happen? This whole thing about relief supplies should not go in the hands of Hamas. Even if it goes there, what can Hamas do? Because they are under constant surveillance. And Israel as a state is very powerful. Their ability to surveil the whole area by land, sea, and air and human intelligence is unmatched anywhere else in the world. So Gaza is under such light. In that kind of a situation, to impose conditions on supply of relief is to make it impossible to deliver assistance. Now, to relax this situation, there has to be mediation with the leadership of Hamas. And there are Arab countries who have been in touch with Hamas, like Qatar has been in touch with Hamas. They have been in the past found to be helping them financially also. So mediation of Qatar in this respect can at least connect with the people who are involved in the whole process. Similarly, other Middle Eastern countries, I understand that Egypt also has had in the past clout with Hamas. But so far, one does not hear much about Egypt's efforts. Though yesterday there was a summit organized in Egypt by the president of Egypt, where important Arab countries and Turkey and Western countries were invited. And most of them actually counseled restraint and most of them who are present actually, while condemning the horrors unleashed by Hamas, have also asked for the revenge to be under control, not to be driven by this, unrestrained revenge. So there are voices of reason, but they are drowned at the present juncture in the reaction to the violence unleashed on the civilians in Israel. And Israel has important supporters in the West, America, Europe, and leadership in all these countries now are extremely cautious about even use of words. They are shunning words which might allow a certain permissiveness in their own view. I'm using the word with care, so that words like help and assistance and alleviation of misery, etc., can be utilized by Hamas for different ends. So there's caution in this respect also, which is the consequence of the original violence unleashed.
There's a stalemate of sorts that happens to the broader policy stand of a two-state solution, right? I mean, right now the thing is to resolve the current conflict compared to the broader two-state solution. So if you could just briefly talk about that, this dichotomy, it will be very helpful for our listeners.
Two-state solution at the moment, the Israelis have stopped talking about it. Actually, Prime Minister Netanyahu, for the last several years, actually has been running down the two-state idea. And it was President Trump who actually encouraged him when he moved the US embassy to Jerusalem. And when Trump took actions giving US support, Netanyahu's whole approach denouncing the two-state theory. Now, the hardliners who are there in the Israeli cabinet, they are opposed by the Israelis themselves. There is a liberal opinion within Israel. The two-state solution, which has been a long-standing demand, and most countries actually feel that that is the way for peace in the Middle East between Israel and Palestinians. But somehow or the other, the right wing and the hawks within the Israeli establishment have now come to denounce two-state. And especially after the action on the 7th of October, they argue, and the whole argument is that if you allow a state to exist there, then it becomes a base for terrorist actions. They are not for the Palestinian state at all. There is also the point made by many who say that even Palestinian Authority in Ramallah was not to the liking of the hardliners in Israel. And there is the point that Prime Minister Netanyahu himself was supporting Hamas so that Palestinian Authority's clout can be reduced and Hamas could cut into the clout of Mahmoud Abbas. So in these kinds of policies and in this kind of, atmospherics, two-state solution appears distant at this juncture. And for peace, what is required is first take care of people's misery and introduce an element of stability in the region and persuade all sides to step back from this very, very violent disposition. Hamas is still prepared to launch actions, though they keep denying it. And Israeli Air Force, they are bombing and they are saying, stories say that every day 40, 50 Palestinians are killed. So this dance of death has to stop to instill a certain sense of confidence and sanity. And for that reason, diplomatic efforts are necessary. The countries who have influence have to pull their weight together. Arab summit in Cairo was not that successful. The UN Security Council has not been able to muster a strength for a single resolution so far. So these efforts have to somehow or the other move forward.
Thank you, sir. That's our time. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on India sends humanitarian aid to the people of Palestine. The participants were Sheelkant Sharma, former diplomat, and Ishan Mittal, anchor. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani. You can listen to it on our mobile app News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel News on AIR Official. You may share your feedback about this program through email at airnsdtalks@gmail.com or WhatsApp on 9289094044.